Hey everyone, welcome to the Heart of David. Some interesting topics today, and I hope everyone is doing well. I'll get to this in a second. You can see the title of this, and quite honestly, you might not be able to stomach this, but please know ahead of time that it comes out for the good for her. So just know that it might be hard to bear for you, and the reason that I'm doing this is because we have a lot of narcissism in this world, narcissistic personality disorder, narcissistic traits. Everyone has traits, but it can get to a certain point where it disrupts other people's lives. People end up dying. People end up very sick, betrayed, abused, emotionally, physically. I'm gonna try to outline this to show you what happens. I'm gonna dive a bit into my own life. I have complex PTSD and PTSD, so I know how to identify. I don't know how long, this is probably going to be a long video, but because this is long and I have to show something else. I want to show that people can change. I want to show you that it's a choice. You're going to say, I've never heard that narcissists make a choice. They do have a choice. Believe me, I've heard enough stories that people can either take the left or the right. So, this is more extreme though, this case, and it's good it was caught young. It was good that this person could be helped. But the point of my video here is to show you also biblically that people can be robbed of their conscience if they're young enough. This is one of those poignant stories. It's disturbing, and so I'll get into that in a second. Actually, there might be a video I want to show you ahead of time. Yeah, I think I may want to do that to get a little bit of. Anyways, I'm gonna mention some things before I even start this, and some very bad things that are happening right now in the Christian world. So I'm sure you know who this person is. Many of you will. Dr. Ramani, narcissist, just a psychologist. She went through a lot of abuse herself, so she knows about it. She's got quite a few subscribers, over 1 million. And so I'm making a basis for what I'm going to get into. The conscience. Narcissists don't lack empathy. They just choose not to use it. And don't mistake yourself. They know right from wrong, and they do have the ability of empathy. And I'll let that play. So this is what I wanted to say, my usual news ahead of time. I guess maybe the Jews and people in general say, what happened to the Jews in the Holocaust was horrible, and it was. And that was a time for them to say, is there a Yahweh? Is there an Elohim God? Is there a God? How could this happen? How could this happen? And when I read, what is it? Ezekiel 37, the prophecy of the dry bones. It could be a prophecy attached to Israel being reborn. But I just had this thought today. This is the first time I thought of this. What if all of that happened what if all of World War II happened just to bring them into their homeland? That's how Yah works. So I wanted to say that you guys are going to want to hear this. This is the second. Well, this is a news story. Bill 6090 has passed. I believe that's what they said because I heard John MacArthur talking, which makes the Bible, part of it, illegal. People aren't saying that outwardly, but I just saw something in a video saying Charlie Kirk, people talking on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, saying, did they just outlaw part of the Bible? And Tucker Carlson said yes. So when I look at it and I look at the weighing it is, the structure that it is, what it says, it does. So part of our Bible, part of the Bible in the United States of America, under the use of being anti-Semitic, anti-Semitic laws to try to protect the Jews, which is understandable. I understand a lot of them have to be done because, listen, they're the scapegoat of humanity, right? They're God's chosen oracles. They're still God's chosen people. And he has blinded them because of everything that happened, and to bring in the fullness of the Gentiles. But it says that part of this anti-Semitic law is something about symbols and things that you can't say. And you can't say that the Pharisees killed Jesus. But that's what it says in the Bible. And, they gave him over to Herod, right? Well, Pontius Pilate did, but the Jews killed Jesus, okay? That's a fact. That's not something that I'll ever take back. And if you're ever asked, I hope you never take back either. But that's just been outlawed. And I just heard John MacArthur speaking. And just things that you wouldn't have thought it's begun. Listen, I can't say for sure if I know this is the beginning, like it's going to start domino affecting. But listen, look at all the things that are being passed. Look at all the stuff that's happening in the world. Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? I don't know what's going to happen next. I can't pretend to. But they've just outlawed part of our belief in our Christian scripture under the guise of anti-Semitism to protect them. So there's that. And just so you know, that's extremely significant. That's never been done. That's like what China's doing right now. They're changing the Bible, eh? You know that? They, in a part, they said, like, what did they say about what was Mary Magdalene was brought to be stoned? What should we do with her? And the Chinese changed it to that Jesus stoned her. I'm going to play about 7 minutes of this so she can explain this first. I'm going to give you a little bit of something I went through that made me just like bad experiences that I went through and what it made me feel like afterward. So I can identify. So, and you can get better. So let's check this out.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Romani. Welcome back. Today we're going to take on a very, very critical topic. It's the idea of whether narcissists lack empathy or not, or do they have empathy and just choose not to use it. Please though hit that bell, subscribe to this channel. Not only do you get notifications when we put out our videos, YouTube Lives, and other new series. So here's the key question. Do narcissists actually not have empathy? Or do they have empathy and choose not to use it? Let's start by breaking down the central sort of definition of narcissism, or even narcissistic personality disorder. And one of the key elements that comes up diagnostically, sort of number one, is that they lack empathy. Okay? Nowhere does it say that they don't have empathy. It says that they have less empathy. So right out the gate, we know that they have some preserved capacity for empathy. All right, well, that's troubling, because anyone who's been...
I forgot to mention, this isn't an attack on people with narcissistic personality disorder or traits or borderline or any of those. It's not about that. This is about, I would say, this is biblical. Look at the way the world is going. There's so many of them now, and it's because of the way the world is with computers, electronics, pictures, everyone always taking pictures of their bodies, their faces, cameras. It's turned people into monsters, man. It really has. I'm sorry. I can't go around it. It's not an attack, and rather I would hope someone with NPD or something close to that would watch this and learn from it, because there are self-aware narcissists who I know are trying their hardest to get better. There are.
In a narcissistic relationship will say, it feels like my partner has no empathy. Or more problematic, they'll say, I feel like this person has empathy sometimes, but not all of the time. And that's probably a more accurate depiction. I like to view narcissism as a pattern where there's diminished empathy, but they are definitely not absent of it. They've got it. What is so problematic is that they have empathy. They have the capacity for empathy. But the fact of the matter is, even armed with that, they choose not to use that empathy. That is a slap across the face. So let's break that down. First of all, it's important to understand empathy has two pieces. Number one, it's the piece of attempting to understand, reflect, and be present with the emotions or feelings of another person, even if you're not experiencing them, and perhaps even if you don't necessarily agree with them, that you would understand that a person may be sad or angry or have some other emotional state. But part two of empathy is being able to self-reflect on your impact on other people. So in the simplest example, empathy, the self part of empathy, the self-reflective part of empathy, is taking a minute before you react to someone to think about how your words and how your actions could affect somebody else. Because narcissists often just say and do what they want without thinking, that absence of empathy, the problem is that they hurt a lot of people. Because it's not that they have no empathy, they've got some, they know they've done something wrong. And 2 hours later, 6 hours later, 24 hours later, 5 weeks later, may come back to you to say, yeah, I can see how that made you upset, or I guess I'm sorry.
Now, I have autism and CPTSD. Something I've learned. It took a while, but it was mostly, I got worse. I would butt in when people were talking. I've totally learned to stop that. That's just a trait of autism, but learning to have patience and all that. And what was I going to say? Oh, yes. So what she mentioned is, and this is a huge thing, and this is the reason why narcissists can't get better. They lack the ability to self-reflect. So if you self-reflect, so if you ever hear about narcissists not being able to be alone, and you can look it up on the internet. Why don't they like being alone? Because of self-reflection. They'll be stuck with their thoughts and feelings and emotions, and don't like that. And when I moved in here, being alone actually really helped me, because I started to unwind of just so much hell that I had been through, all different sorts. A lot of physical illness, but not just that. So their unwillingness to attack their shame, to go after it and just say, hey, this is what it is. They lack the ability to introspect. So there's a big issue right there.
Sorry I said that. The apologies are kind of hollow, but they are apologies because they get that they did something wrong. But in the moment, their selfish, impulsive need means that they're willing to throw all that empathy stuff out of the window to do what feels right and necessary to them at that moment. But what a lot of people like to believe is that narcissists don't have any empathy, and that's not true. Like I said, they tend to have less. But I would actually argue that a lot of narcissists actually have a fully normal capacity for empathy. Think about your early stage, maybe in a romantic relationship with a narcissist, and you were being love bombed. Or think about when you were on a job working with a very charismatic narcissistic boss or colleague, and how attuned they were to you and remembering little details because they were trying to win you over on something. Or a narcissistic family member who was trying to get you on board with the thing that mattered to them. They were so hyper attuned to you at that moment that obviously they were able to be open and aware to your emotional state. One could argue that what narcissists do with empathy is that they weaponize empathy. Empathy, when used correctly.
Yes, they weaponize it. But you know what? Two things here. I forget. The very fact that they know how to go about the paces. You know, you may say, well, it's just an act and you can act anything. Well, they sure know how to do it. And I don't know about you, but I think there are, you know, like, do they truly fall in love with you? Is it really nice at the start? Are they having fun? Is the narcissist really in tune with you and stuff like that? I think so. I think in a lot of cases it is, but it doesn't last very long because they're idealizing you and stuff like that. You know, one wrong move and it's all bad, right? I certainly have some black and white thinking with autism. But to say that I don't know, I think it's kind of like a scapegoat to say, yeah, they can't have empathy, they can't have this. It's like you give them a free pass. I'm not going to give them a free pass because I think they do. They know, but it's just like she says, it's just diminished. There's too much proof saying otherwise to the effect that they do.
Gives us a lot of information about the other person. It teaches us the sorts of triggers for sadness, the kinds of things that anger them or agitate them, the things that they feel anxious about, and any number of other situations or triggers that bring out strong emotions in a person. If you study that carefully enough, you better believe that you can then use that knowledge to manipulate that person. If you know what gets a rise out of that person, creates emotions out of them, if you're the narcissist and you're aware, which is empathy, of the other person's emotional state, when you need it, you can turn around and use that as a weapon, as a tool, as a way of manipulating them, as a way of getting a rise out of them, and then turning around and gaslighting them and saying, you're being too
keep this
sensitive.
on.
This idea, though, that
Sorry.
a narcissist could have a capacity for empathy, but then still be so uncaring and unfeeling, is a really, really difficult idea for people to get their head around. Because when it comes down to brass tacks at that point, what it means is that they really, really just don't care. They're not able to reel in their own reactions, their own responses, their own manipulations, even though you're feeling bad.
So, sorry about my, I try to keep that off. Sorry. I eat my greens, that's lettuce you hear. I eat a lot of lettuce. To help me go to the bathroom, by the way, I take opiates, so. And for inflammation. It's really good, keeps you healthy. What was I saying there? I'm pretty sure one way you can test, or you can see that a narcissist does have empathy, is to see maybe an animal hurt or something like that. Will they help it? Will they do anything like that? Some will probably not, and there's certainly some people out there who do things to animals, but can they identify better with an animal, right, than a human being is my point. So let's get into this video. It's going to be disturbing, but it's worth hearing. It has a good ending, and this is to prove that if from the time you're born and you just go through bad things unchecked, you can go through life with zero conscience. This is an extreme case, and I just wanted to say, when you guys see me in videos, it's probably mostly when I'm sitting down. If you see my head like this, you see my head tilted, you'll probably notice in some videos, it's because I have a torn sternocleidomastoid muscle of my neck, so that never heals. So it always pulls. It's kind of like dystonia, but it isn't that. But anyways, that's what it is.
Are people afraid of you, Beth?
Beth Thomas was just 6 years old when her deep blue eyes shocked American society after this documentary about her life was broadcasted on television.
Yeah.
Undaunted and bored, Beth recounted how she tried to murder her younger brother when she was going to kill her parents, and why she had stolen knives from the family kitchen. Despite her short life, she had suffered brutal abuse from her biological father. The girl had been diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, RAD, a condition in which young children fail to establish healthy bonds with their parents or caregivers due to extreme abuse. Her signs of psychopathy had been developed as a form of self-defense against the outside world. Beth Thomas was adopted at 19 months old.
This isn't to give anyone a pass, okay? But this is reality of life for some people, and some people was me. I wasn't abused in my family. Thank y'all. But anyway, my CPTSD did start though by being hit in the face repeatedly, and I wasn't so well after the coming weeks. The rest of my life, started drinking, it went into a whole lot of stuff. I developed PTSD from other events. When people go through this, they go through stuff like this at a young age, and they're abused and stuff. Things start to happen. You start to feel shame anger, confusion, all sorts of stuff. And depending on what it is, you know, let's say you get shot, let's say you got stabbed, let's say you got robbed, let's say you got beaten, let's say, you get my point. Let's say it's repeated. So it's like torture. Torture, how about torture? You might start to develop certain defenses. You might not trust people. Certainly things will get worse, you know, when you get away from the attackers or the people. I don't know. It can go all kinds of ways. People don't always turn out that way, though, and that is the truth, and that's very important to know. But like PTSD, CPTSD, just trauma, you become numb. I became very numb, and it can get to the point where you become numb to everyone and everything. And I never lost my empathy for people. I didn't. I never lost that. But I forgot a lot of the stuff that happened in my life. And coming here 6 years ago, I was only able to piece it all together. I don't mean just my physical ailments, of which I got my diagnosis, thank Yah. But things that had happened to me, where this all began. So, like, I feel very bad for people who are in a family like this, or people who are tortured, sexually trafficked. Like, you think of the things they go through. Like I said, it isn't a path. There still is a choice, and I know there's a way to prove it. I just can't do that in this video. And I believe they still have a choice, because the worst of the worst have turned around. I've seen it.
Old brother Jonathan by Tim and Julie, a conservative American couple who had been married for 12 years but were unable to have children of their own. Although Tim mentioned not needing children to make their lives complete, they decided to venture into adoption as a means of sharing and transmitting the completeness. Julie seemed more excited about the idea of adoption and mentioned that it was a dream shared by both. Finally, in 1984, they were notified of the availability of adoption of Beth and Jonathan. They were surprised by the speed of the process, and they were told that they were...
You might have missed that first part because I interrupted. These two kids were abused in another family, and now they're being adopted into another good family.
Were normal and healthy, as if they were children without a past, like two blank books. Later, they obtained information regarding the living conditions that both children had before their adoption, and discovered that the children lived in a despicable environment. Both showed signs of having been mistreated and abandoned, and their food and hygiene conditions were precarious. Beth showed signs of having been sexually abused by her father and could spend a whole day alone with a box of cereal to eat. Jonathan lived reclining in a crib surrounded by urine and dirty diapers, and his head was misshapen from having spent so much time in the same pose. While his back was completely flat, his forehead had bumps. The boy was 7 months old, and the lack of stimulation had affected his abilities. He could not raise his head or turn around.
Can you imagine?
After a short time, they noticed that Beth began to show aggressive and sexual behaviors that were gradually increasing, mainly directed towards her brother, but also towards her adopted parents and domestic animals, through hitting, kicking, the use of pins to prick them, pinching her brother's genitals, self-injurious genital masturbation in public places, and confessions about wanting to kill Jonathan, Tim, and Julie. When they were overwhelmed by this situation, they decided to take Beth to Dr. Ken Magid, a clinical psychologist specializing in abused children, who conducted this interview with Beth, presented in the video when she was 6.5 years old.
Who's afraid of you, Beth?
John.
Your brother. And why is your brother afraid of you?
Because I hurt him so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what, at nighttime, what do your parents do to your door?
Lock it shut.
Why do they lock it shut?
Because they don't want me to hurt John.
Right. And they're kind of afraid of Of hurting John? Of you hurting John?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are they afraid that you might hurt them?
Yep.
During the session with the therapist,
What I'm reporting to you in this is a girl without a conscience, because all she ever knew was torture and rape. That's just so horrible, man. Good ending, though.
Beth was distant and jaded. She seemed destined to be a murderer and lacking any ounce of empathy.
Would you, Beth?
Mm-hmm.
When would you do it?
Nighttime.
Okay. Why would you do nighttime?
Because I don't like them seeing me do it. But they can tell me do it.
Mm-hmm. And what would you do to him, Beth? Okay. What would you stab him with?
A knife.
Do you ever stick pins in people?
Mm-hmm.
Who?
My brother.
Okay. Do you do it a little bit or a lot?
A lot.
Okay. And what are you trying to do to your brother?
So,
Why do you want your brother to die?
because I was hurt so bad, and I don't want to be around people.
Okay. Who else would you like to stick pins into?
Mommy and Daddy.
What would you like?
Did you hear that? She doesn't want to be around anyone. Does that sound familiar to anyone in pain on this channel right now? I can tell you with physical pain, I don't want to be around people. But to me, that's a side that would be like any social type. Any social doesn't mean just you're not talking to people. Or any social people still talk to people. But she's very irritable, right? Around anyone because of the things that happen. You know what the thing is in this? She's so young. I can still see the innocence. You can see the innocence, but it's mixed with absolutely no conscience. And she doesn't even know the difference because she never knew another world.
To have happened to them?
Die.
Jesus couldn't have lived to save Israel, yet he chose to die to save the world.
Tim is the minister of a small Methodist church in the South. He and his wife Julie have been married for 12 years.
Jesus didn't say
Unable to have children of their own, they decided to adopt. In February of 1984, they received a call from the Department of Social Services telling them they had 2 children available for adoption. They were told that Beth, 19 months old, and her brother Jonathan, 7 months old, were normal and healthy.
we did not need children to make our lives complete. We felt secure in ourselves and secure in our relationship, but we wanted to share that with somebody else, and we felt like we had a lot to pass on to a child. And that
She was
what
only
we
19
really wanted
months
to
old.
do. And when the phone call came, it was like, at last it's here.
And it seemed like a miracle. It had happened so quick. We'd heard of couples having to wait 5-10 years on a child, and here we had 2 young children. It was like the answer to our dream.
Their dream became a nightmare when they realized that Beth and Jonathan had severe emotional problems.
Beth and her brother Eric were children of a dysfunctional family. His father was an alcoholic and his mother neglected early child rearing, also passing away a year and a half after Eric's birth. They had an older sister, but she was hardly home since she worked in a strip club. Her father sexually abused Beth from birth to 3 years, at which point social services took care of the children.
We had the kids with us, Beth and her younger brother John, for probably a couple of months until we began to learn something about their background and their past. And when we learned it, some things seemed to fall in place about her behavior and John's behavior. From several sources, we discovered that they didn't have enough food to eat, that perhaps even Beth went all day maybe with just a box of Kick cereal. John himself was found in a bassinet with little patches of urine all over it, and a dirty diaper, and a couple of bottles at his feet that had curdled milk, and the back of his head was completely flat. The front of his head had bulged out, and at 7 months he couldn't raise his head, couldn't roll over. He was just had no stimulation, and we think perhaps that had happened to Beth, and it wasn't very long until she began showing some signs of perhaps even some abuse. There was a nightmare that she had, and the nightmare was about a man who was falling on her and hurting her with a part of himself.
Tell me about your birth father. What was that nightmare like?
When he touched my vagina
Okay.
until it bled, hurt it a lot until it bled, and wouldn't feed me a lot. He'd hit on me, wouldn't be very nice to me.
How old were you?
1.
And in your nightmare, what happens?
I get real scared.
Where are you in the nightmare? What happens in the dream?
I'm in the house, upstairs.
And then...
That's a good question. I don't mean anything in a bad way at all. Do you think Satan has her there? Like, man, that's just so horrible. And you know what the worst thing is? Is that what you see there? I'm not going to say it's probably 10 times as common for a child to be treated that way now, if not more. So you wonder, where did these kids go? I don't know what year that was. Actually, I think I looked, because it shows this person in the end, they make it through. Could be maybe a bit older than me. I don't know. I'd have to look, but think of how many people are abused now. Can you imagine how many broken people there are?
And what happens, Beth?
When he comes upstairs and hurts.
How do you feel when you talk about this?
Scared.
Where's your birth father? What's he doing?
He's right there, and there's his hand. His hand's right there.
Where?
Right there. You can't hardly see it because it's green.
What's it touching?
My vagina.
And what is your birth father doing?
Hurting it.
Your face looks sad. Can you tell me about that?
It's crying because there's dots of the tears.
When referring to the nightmares in which a man fell on her and hurt her, Beth implies that she was sexually assaulted by her father. The repercussions of the abuse she had suffered as a child had led to uncontrollable anger.
Beth had endured severe neglect and abuse as a child. Her birth mother died when she was 1. Because of these early childhood experiences, Beth never developed a sense of conscience, love, or trust for anyone. The early sexual abuse by her birth father would cause her to exhibit inappropriate sexual behavior, especially toward her brother.
Does your brother have private parts?
Yeah.
Yeah? What is his private parts?
Penis and butt.
And what do you do with your brother, with his private parts, Beth?
I heard it.
Tell me about it. What do you do?
Now, I pinch it, squeeze it,
Turn away if you need to.
kick it.
When you do things to your brother's private parts, what does he say?
Stop.
Okay, tell me that.
Well, he says stop, but I don't stop.
Do you hurt him?
A lot.
Okay. And would you like to do that to other boys?
When I caught her with Jonathan,
She doesn't know the difference. She doesn't have a conscience.
and one morning she was molesting him. He was crying and his pants were down, and I said, Beth, what's happening? And she said, I pulled his penis and put my finger up his anus. And I said, didn't he say to stop? And she said, yeah, he did. And I said, did you? And she said, no.
Beth and her brother Jonathan had lived alongside their biological father in a state of total abandonment. Also, as a result of her pain, Beth sexually harassed her brother.
Have you ever rubbed your private parts? Do you do it a lot?
A lot.
How much do you do that?
Not every single day in Lexington. I did it every single day until it got real bad and messed up, and I had to go to the doctor, and I did not like it.
What do you mean by real bad?
Well, it looked real raw, got all kinds of boo-boos on it, germs, a lot of stuff from my hand.
And it bled?
She started to masturbate at inappropriate times. I remember one time, specifically, when we were at the hospital waiting for Tim to come out. He was there visiting. And Beth and John were in the back seat, and I turned around, and she had her legs spread and was masturbating in a public parking lot. And I had tried to explain to her numerous times before that that's private area. You don't do it in public places. And gone over that with her, and it never seemed to faze her. And
Julie, how often would your daughter masturbate?
daily, constantly.
Do you have animals, Beth?
4 of them.
Can you tell me their names?
Clyde, Shuggy, Darcy, and Annie. And Daddy said a day ago that there was a stray cat who did not have a home, so Daddy was taking care of it and took it to the vet when he had his flight to go.
And what do you do to the animals, Beth?
Stick them with pins.
Do you stick them a little?
So you understand, like, when you see in movies and stuff, or you hear, you might hear there was a school shooting, and then you start hearing, what happened, what was the story? And you hear about, them killing cats first and doing all this type of stuff. Well, now you know. This is a reason why it happens. They're very angry. And they're, self-internalization, that maybe it's their only way to take it out. Maybe they think it's normal. Who knows? I show this case because this is like, the epitome, right? But as it shows later, this isn't the only girl that's like this, eh? But anyways, it's a good case study. And you wonder why some people are hypersexualized, why they seem to like to have sex a lot. Like you say, I don't want to use like a hypersexual. In not all cases, like autism has it, like bipolar has it, things like that. Those are regular occurrences with that, but it happens in abuse too.
A little bit or a lot?
A lot.
What are you trying to do to the animals, Beth?
Kill them.
What do they do when you stick them with the pins?
Well, Annie cries. She's a dog.
She got baby birds down out of the nest, and we thought maybe she was just curious. So we explained that she could hurt them, put them back, and went through a whole sitting down and talking to her about the problem of it. And the next day we went out to check the baby birds, and they were on the ground dead with their necks broken.
Let's talk about what happened once when you were smaller, when you found some baby birds in a tree. What did you do then?
I took them out.
Mm-hmm. And what did Mom say to you?
That the mother will not come back if somebody touches her baby.
Mm-hmm. Are the baby birds kind of small? Can you describe them for me?
Well, they don't have their eyes open, but they can hear me, and they look up.
Are they kind of helpless? Little baby birds? Can they fly?
No.
Can they run away?
Yes.
They can? Are they easy to catch or hard to catch?
I haven't watched this in a long time. I think I saw this twice. Last time was probably, it could be 5 years ago. But I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'm going to play what happens. So, like, I don't want to like bathe in this, you know. So I'm going to fast forward it and see how it goes when it goes along.
Hard. And said,
Reason? You're doing a good job, honey. Go ahead and tell me what happened.
I squeezed them.
And what happened?
They died.
And was beginning to grow to such an excess that our life was miserable at home. John would cry in the mornings and say his stomach hurt. For the longest time, we thought maybe this child has some problem with his intestinal area, or maybe he has allergies, and so we tried to get all that checked out. Come to find out, Beth was coming out of her room and hitting him in the stomach. And so
remember, they adopted them at 9 when she was 19 months old, and I forget what they said, 4 months for the son. So they would have raised them maybe without much trouble for a while. You can see how that'd be confusing, eh? That stuff wouldn't have started right away. I don't know. I don't think that was clear. But certainly stuff started to happen. Can you imagine what the parents went through too? Thank the Lord that it was a pastor.
So as a last resort, just to protect him, we had to tie our door shut. So I guess for the last 3 or 4 months now, we've had to tie her in at night, sort of barricade her.
Other times, the girl waited until her parents did not see her to hit her younger brother hard in the stomach. In addition, she was sticking pins into him. The situation was unmanageable for the parents, who could not control the girl. To protect the brother, they placed a latch on Beth's room and locked her in at night to prevent her from continuing to do harm.
The repercussions of Beth's tragic childhood led to uncontrollable rage. Despite the love and nurturing of her adoptive parents, she took this rage out on herself, on her brother, and on them. Her acts of violence became more and more cruel and frightening.
Well, I noticed several, like paring knives in the kitchen.
So something comes to mind right away, a scripture. What did Jesus say? It's better. What are those who offend one of these? Children. It would be better if a millstone were tied around their neck and drowned in the depths of the sea than to make them stumble from believing in him. So you think of the people responsible. Yeah.
Missing. And my first thought was Beth. And I felt a little guilty about it at first. I thought, nah. But I really didn't even mention it to her. They'd been gone several weeks. She was sitting at the table drawing and mentioned to me, "What do those knives look like that are gone, Mom?" And I said, "What knives, Beth?" And she said, "Weren't they kind of silver and about this big?" And I knew then, and then this little smile that's not a sweet smile, but a malicious type of smile. And I knew then, I thought, she's got them.
Tell me about the knives. Where did you get them?
From the drawer.
And where else? Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it.
I got them from the dishwasher.
What kind of knives?
Big sharp ones.
And what do you want to do with those knives?
Kill John and Mommy with them, and Daddy.
Beth frankly admits that she wishes to kill both her adoptive parents. Her acts of violence were increasingly cruel and chilling, to the point where she now had the weapons to accomplish the killing.
And when Mommy asks you about where the knives are, what do you say?
I don't know where they are.
What did you think she might do with the knives?
My first thought was Jonathan.
And the reason we thought that was that she had, by this time, she had tried to kill John on several occasions and openly admitted that.
In the basement, she was hitting his head against a cement floor. I heard his screams and ran down and had to literally pull her hands off, and she looked wild-eyed.
Did you get real mad at him? Did you hit his head real hard? Tell me about it. How many times did you do it? A lot? What was the floor like?
Cement.
And what happened to your brother? Tell me about it.
His head hurt real bad, but his chin, he had to have stitches in it.
Could you stop? Use your words, Beth.
No.
Okay. What was your brother doing when you were doing this?
Playing with the toys.
Okay. Was he asking you to stop when you? Stop you.
Burst after the girl repeatedly hit his head on a concrete floor in an attempt to take his life. If not for her parents, this would certainly have happened. It was clear now that Beth had a psychological problem.
Dr. McGid felt that for the well-being of the family, Beth needed to be temporarily separated from them. In April of 1989, her parents brought her to a special home with an expert at raising children with early attachment disorders, especially children who are dangerous to themselves and others.
I have children that have killed numerous times. Cold-blooded family members, neighbor children, killed them. And they can do it. Makes my blood run cold just thinking about 9 years old. People don't think a 9-year-old is capable of cold-blooded murder, but they are. That attachment break does severe damage to the heart, the ability to care and the ability to love. If they don't care and they don't love, they're capable of anything. We're very strict about it.
All I can say, and like you might say Dave White showing this, because there is a good end, is to show you what can happen to a person. To be separated and have no conscience. Maybe you've never seen something like this before. This is all Satan, man. It is. I don't care which way you look at it. I can't wait to be in the original, or whatever Yah intends for us, the Garden of Eden again.
About everything. Everything is completely monitored. We take complete control because a child who's unattached does not trust. And because they don't trust, they don't allow anybody to be boss of them. So we take complete control. They are not boss of anything. They have to ask to get a drink of water. They have to ask to go to the bathroom. They have to ask to leave our sight. Part of that is because we cannot trust them because of the damage that they've done before.
Worried about the situation, her adoptive parents tried to help her in different ways and took her to countless specialists. The aggressions were incessant to the point that it was impossible to continue a healthy life. Everything changed when they met the therapist Ken Magid, a clinical psychologist specializing in abused children and victims of serious abuse, so traumatized during the first years of life that they do not establish emotional ties with other people. The doctor worked with children who could not accept love, who had no conscience, and who could hurt and even kill without remorse. The proposal was an intensive behavior modification therapy, and part of the sessions with Beth were recorded and formed part of the documentary. After assessing the extent of Beth's psychological problems, the specialist decided that it was best to separate her from the rest of the family. In April 1989, the girl was taken to a specialized residence for children with attachment disorders that are a danger to themselves and others. There, Beth lived with minors who had murdered in cold blood. The therapy consisted of imposing extreme restrictions. Beth had to ask permission for everything, including drinking water and going to the bathroom. Part of the goal was to rebuild Beth's self-esteem so that she perceived herself as a person of value.
Beth, would you like to say grace, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this good day and everybody doing good. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. They believe that they're evil. They believe they're from the devil. They believe that they are not a person of value. And we have to change that, and we have to build that from a child who's nothing, who's a bad kid in their own mind, to a child who's valuable and loving, and they see themselves as that.
To be honest, I don't know what she just said there. They think they're bad. They think they're this. I didn't. So they don't show that in this. So there you go. It's from the devil. They never knew this stuff. That's unfortunate, man. You know what? That child is, she's actually pretty cute, eh? Like, even like that. I mean, like, she's so, just the innocence. What they're doing here is the right thing, and you'll see. Telling them what they can and can't do persistently to retrain that mind. It's especially relevant in a child, because if you get at them in that age, what else are you going to do with a kid like that, right?
You don't have to bite this.
When they do a chore well, we can say, you did a good job, you're a good worker. And then it just builds that self-esteem little by little so that they change the way that they see themselves.
Several months into treatment in this controlled environment, Beth had made progress, and her therapist decided to loosen some of the controls.
Anybody wants some more? I can.
Beth continued to show signs of improvement. She began to develop a sense of right and wrong. She seemed to respond to affection, was more outgoing.
Gosh, you don't have to like.
She went to public school, made friends at the local church, and even sang in the choir.
And you're going to go into Sunday school again this morning?
Yeah.
And get stickers. Maybe you could put one on your nose.
In the years you made it clear that the time of Christ was near, though the people couldn't see what Messiah ought to be, though your word contained the plan, they just could not understand. That's Elijah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a beard. See his beard. There's his nose, and that's his...
Oh, I see.
Yeah, see his beard is kind of flowing in the wind and everything. Elijah taken up into heaven, the fiery chariot. Huh? Well, that's Elisha. That's the other prophet that took Elijah's place. And he was left, and there's Elijah, you know.
You hear the innocence in that girl? Like, and like, you know, it's like, that's why Jesus said you must be born again. You must be a child. I think it's the innocence, man. It's like approaching the Bible in a way that you're innocent. You really want to know, right? You're ready.
And he learned about sheep. And the Lord is my shepherd. March 3rd, you just got that yesterday, huh?
In the beginning, we couldn't trust her with anything. She was locked up at night. We had alarms on the door at night, so she wasn't sneaking around doing things with the other children. We don't worry about that anymore. There's no alarm on her door at night now. She sleeps in the same room with my own daughter, and I trust her that much. She brushes the dogs, and I trust her that much. Because she has earned that trust. She's learned it. She has a heart, and she has a love inside, and she feels bad when she does something now. In the
Isn't
past,
that amazing?
she didn't have a conscience. She didn't feel anything when she did something bad. There was just no feeling there. And now she does feel bad, and it shows in her face. I believe that Beth can make it. She's got a really bright mind. She's got a good heart now, which has done a lot of healing. She's got a really super set of parents. They're powerful, they're knowledgeable, they're motivated. She's done a lot of good work with you in therapy, with Cannell and with myself. She wants to heal, and that's the number one key. And she wants to heal because she has a family that really cares about her, and she wants to be with them.
Animal therapy also helped her empathize. In the controlled environment, Beth was showing signs of improvement and was even beginning to develop a differentiation between good and bad. At home, she also had to feed various farm animals and seemed to respond to affection. She laughed and interacted with other living beings and even hugged her therapist. Gradually, Beth began to have more contact with other children, was sent to school, became friends at church, and began participating in a choir. With less than a year of therapy, Beth's attitude changed radically.
Do you know where that anger came from?
That's when my birth dad hurt me. I had it all inside, and I remembered it, and I started doing it.
And what did that do when it was inside?
It made me want to hurt people really bad.
And who did you hurt?
My brother, my mom and dad, and animals. And animals.
Who did it hurt the most?
My brother.
Who did it hurt the most?
Me.
Why don't you tell me that?
It hurt me the most.
How did it hurt you the most?
Because when I hurt other people,
It had only been a couple of months since Beth had admitted that her wish was to murder her brother and her parents, but the change was resounding. The girl expressed regret for how she had treated her brother. She no longer harmed herself and lamented for having hurt people. After passing through the residence, Beth began to feel empathy and regretted having hurted her loved ones.
I'm burning my good self.
How do you feel right now, Beth?
Sad.
It's kind of tough to talk about, isn't it?
Yes.
It is.
Beth gave her last interview for this film in December of 1989. Although she had made progress, she would still need extensive therapy. Not all abused children are as deeply scarred as Beth, but all abused children suffer a profound hurt for the rest of their lives. The road to recovery is long and hard for the abused child. There are more than 1 million new victims of child abuse in America every year.
Over the years, we can see Beth as a person with the capacity to empathize and to be aware of the consequences of her actions. Obviously, her apparent evil had its genesis in the continued abuse of which she was a victim as a baby.
Wow.
And her case serves to illustrate the dire consequences of physical and psychological abuse at a young age. Currently, Beth leads a normal life and works as a nurse. Her professional merits have earned her several awards. This case leads us to the following conclusions. the importance of good parenting, especially in critical periods of the child. But it also tells us about the effectiveness, at least in this case, of psychological therapy, even in cases of extreme gravity and that may seem irreconcilable. This total psychological recovery of small Beth could be achieved by raising awareness to the child about their actions, to mend their self-esteem and build the habits and social behavior functional, for example, getting to accept certain standards and to manage, channel, and understand the reason for their anger.
My dark humor wants to say something, but unfortunately, 20 years later, no. Wow, what a change, eh? So after you see that picture, you can definitely see it was the same eyes. You have to get at them very quickly, right? And unfortunately, that's not the case with most people. They get abused and abused and abused in the same home, wherever they go. And you can only imagine with today's society, can you imagine all these trafficked kids? Can you imagine the kids being born here? You know, people coming from other places, coming from horrible, war-torn. Anyways, you see why I did this video now? As hard as that is to watch. Sorry, I hit a stupid mute button. It's good for some things, not good for others. You have to keep it in your sight of vision. Like the blinking light. So what did I say? I said, what a difference. You can see, you know, when they see that picture of that woman, she's beautiful too. You can see it was the same eyes. My dark humor wanted to cut in there and say, I don't want to really do that, but you know, unfortunately 20 years later, no. From one child to the next, you don't know what. Horrible abuse. People coming from, trafficking. You hear all this. You know all this stuff that's happening at the border, which is obviously the fault of Joe Biden. No one else. He's the top in Mayorkas, right? And sure, there are people to blame. But do you know what that's doing to children? Can you imagine the anger in society? And I'm sorry to say, but there's a lot of narcissists. Oh, I'm not saying narcissists do this to kids, but I'm saying there are people who are very abusive. Well, narcissists are abusive, certainly psychologically, and I know they are physically too, but so are other people. Anyways, I hope this has taught you something. Trauma is a hard thing to get over, but it's possible. How is it possible? By dialing. No, I'm just kidding. It's possible by introspecting, by willing to face the shame of why you are the way you are. You got to go back to what it was that happened. You can't do it any other way. And I'm sorry, but alcohol and weed will just make it worse. Alcohol will make you worse, and alcohol will kill you, kill your liver. Face those traumas and turn to scripture. I'm glad that turned out that way. I think that's an excellent ending. The millstone part, that's what I think about, and I can't wait till we can see the new heaven and the new earth. Anyways, I hope this is, I don't know if this edifies anyone in any way, but I hope someone with trauma sees this and understands that I've gone through a lot of trauma, and that there is another side. There is another side, and I'm sorry to say that without Yahweh, without Jesus Christ, the opportunity to truly get better spiritually from the inside is much more difficult than just facing your trauma, because he can help you through it. See ya.